Imagine standing at the edge of a vast, still lake. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and unseen blossoms. You watch as a gentle mist curls across the water's surface. But look closer. That isn't just an island in the distance. It is something else entirely. You are not looking at solid ground. You are gazing upon a village, a community built not on rock but on the very water itself. Today we invite you to drift with us, to explore the forgotten villages, the quiet lives, lived out on these remarkable man-made floating islands. Feel the subtle sway beneath your feet. Hear the lapping of water against reeds. This is a journey into a past almost entirely lost to the modern world, a history of ingenious stillness. You step onto the edge of one of these remarkable creations. The ground beneath you isn't solid earth. It gives just a subtle yielding that tells your senses you are no longer on terra firma. A soft, almost imperceptible sway takes hold, a gentle undulation that is both unfamiliar and strangely comforting. This is the heartbeat of a floating village, a rhythm dictated by the water it rests upon. You feel it in your knees, a quiet tremor that makes you instinctively widen your stance, finding your balance on this living, breathing platform. Imagine the ingenuity, the sheer determination, that led ancient peoples to abandon the stability of land for the rhythmic dance of the lake. These were not mere rafts for a temporary crossing. These were homes, fields, sometimes even entire communities designed to remain afloat, often for generations. They were a testament to humanity's adaptability, a solution born of necessity, resourcefulness, and a profound understanding of their watery world. What compels a community to build its foundation on the water's surface? Perhaps it was protection from predators, human or animal, a natural moat safeguarding their existence. Perhaps it was the richness of the aquatic harvest, a desire to live amidst the fish and reeds that sustained them. Or perhaps, simply, it was the only available space in a land already claimed, pushing them out onto the great expanse of the lake. Whatever the initial spark, the result was a way of life entirely unique, a quiet defiance of gravity and convention. You gaze out across the expanse, a panorama of water meeting sky. The air here is different, crisper, carrying the scent of fresh water and the rustling of sedges. You notice the craftsmanship around you. The interwoven reeds, the bundles of papyrus, the carefully selected timbers. These are the building blocks of a floating world. The early inhabitants were masters of natural materials, understanding how certain plants, when bundled and woven, could trap air, creating buoyancy. They knew the properties of wood, of mud, of the very vegetation that grew along the water's edge. Consider the time it must have taken, the collective effort, to gather the vast quantities of material needed to construct a foundation strong enough to support homes, hearths, and the weight of an entire family. You might observe a small child playing near the edge, his laughter echoing across the water, completely unconcerned by the liquid world beneath him. For him, this gentle sway is normal. It is home. The construction of these islands often began with the harvesting of specific aquatic plants. In some regions, thick mats of reeds, sedges, or papyrus were cut from the lake bed itself, then woven together. Think of it like a giant organic raft. These natural materials, buoyant in their own right, were then layered, creating a substantial base. Imagine the laborious process, pulling these heavy, waterlogged bundles from the lake, then carefully arranging and securing them. In other places, people learned to encourage the growth of these plants into dense, interlocking root systems, essentially farming the very land they would later build upon. To add stability and longevity, these organic foundations were often reinforced. Layers of mud, sometimes mixed with plant fibers or even small stones, would be spread across the top, creating a relatively firm, if still slightly yielding, surface. You might walk across such a surface, feeling the subtle springiness underfoot, a sensation unlike any solid ground you have ever known. This layered approach created a kind of natural buoyancy chamber, with the dense, water-resistant layers on top protecting the lighter, more buoyant materials below. And then there was the anchoring. How did these islands stay in place, resisting the currents and winds that could carry them away? Often, long poles or stakes were driven deep into the lake bed, tethering the island to a fixed point. Sometimes, heavy stones or bundles of weighted materials were dropped from the edges, acting as natural anchors. You might see one of these weathered poles sticking out of the water, a silent sentinel marking the enduring presence of these forgotten homes. The constant maintenance, the regular replacement of decaying materials, was a task for the entire community. Living on a floating island meant a perpetual dialogue with the water, a never-ending cycle of building, repairing, and adapting. The lives lived on these floating islands were intrinsically tied to the water. Fishing was not just a pastime, it was the backbone of their economy and sustenance. You might hear the splash of a net being cast, or see a small, expertly crafted canoe gliding silently between reed banks. Aquaculture, the farming of fish and other aquatic creatures, was often practiced directly beneath or around their homes. Imagine waking to the sound of fish jumping, or the gentle lapping of waves against your doorstep. Agriculture too found its place. While extensive fields were impossible, small garden plots were often created on the more stable sections of the islands, with fertile lakebed mud brought up to cultivate vegetables and herbs. You might observe a small patch of vibrant green, a testament to their resourcefulness, thriving on a foundation of woven reeds and rich mud. Livestock, if kept, would have been limited, perhaps a few chickens or ducks, their movements carefully contained to prevent them from slipping into the water. The isolation, while offering protection, also fostered a unique sense of community. Everyone relied on everyone else. The skills of boat building, net weaving, and island maintenance were passed down through generations. You would notice the strong bonds between families, the collective effort in daily tasks, the shared knowledge that ensured their survival. Life here moved at a different pace, governed by the cycles of the lake, the ebb and flow of its waters. But this ingenious way of life, so perfectly adapted to its environment, began to fade. The reasons are varied and complex. As populations grew, the demand for more permanent, larger-scale agriculture often pushed communities onto more stable land. The arrival of new technologies such as improved boat building or more efficient land management might have reduced the perceived benefits of a floating existence. Environmental changes like fluctuating water levels or increased sedimentation could have made the maintenance of these islands too arduous. You might stand on the ghostly remnants of one such island, a mere patch of reeds today, overgrown and nearly indistinguishable from the natural landscape. The structures are long gone, dissolved back into the lake from which they came. The voices, the laughter, the daily rhythms of life have been swallowed by time and water. But the memory, the idea, of these floating villages persists. This journey we are on together is an exploration not just of physical structures, but of a mindset. It is about humanity's enduring capacity to innovate, to adapt, to carve out a living in the most unlikely of places. It is about understanding that stability does not always mean rigidity, and that a gentle undulation can be a perfectly sound foundation for a fulfilling life. We will delve deeper into specific examples, examining the remarkable floating islands of Lake Titicaca, where the Uros people continue their tradition to this day, though their methods have evolved. We will journey to the ancient world, exploring archaeological evidence that points to similar floating settlements in Europe and Asia, now long vanished. You will hear tales of communities who lived and thrived on these watery foundations, creating a culture unique to their buoyant existence. As you continue to feel that subtle sway beneath your feet, let your imagination carry you back. Picture the sunrise glinting off the water, illuminating the smoke rising from 100 small hearths on 100 small islands. Hear the early morning chatter, the splash of paddles, the sound of life stirring in a village that truly floats. It is a world suspended between sky and water, a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. This is the quiet history of the forgotten floaters, a story that deserves to be brought back to the surface. You have imagined the floating village, the daily life, the very existence suspended above the water. Now, let us delve into the quiet marvel beneath your feet, the engineering that transformed fragile plant matter into stable ground. It is a story of ingenuity, patience, and a profound understanding of the natural world, a tale whispered through the rustling of reeds and the embrace of ancient roots. Consider the surface upon which you stand. It is not solid earth, nor is it a rigid boat. Instead, you feel a gentle give, a subtle bounce that harmonizes with the movement of the lake itself. This sensation is the direct result of materials gathered from the water's edge and meticulously woven into a new kind of landscape. The primary architects of this buoyant world were not stone masons or timber framers, but skilled hands working with reeds and the hidden strength of dense root systems. Imagine the banks of a vast lake or a slow-moving river, abundant with tall, resilient reeds. Think of the Tadora reeds of Lake Titicaca, or the papyrus of the Nile, or even the common reeds found in countless wetlands across Europe and Asia. These plants were not merely food or shelter for wildlife, they were the very bedrock of a civilization on water. The process began with harvest, a demanding task. You would join others in cutting the mature reeds, bundle after bundle, their hollow stems providing natural buoyancy. These bundles, often thick as a man's torso, were then lashed together, side by side, forming a dense, buoyant mat. This first layer was crucial, the foundation of all that would follow. It was a painstaking labor, each bundle carefully placed, each knot tightly drawn, ensuring the integrity of the nascent island. Picture yourself participating in this communal effort. You feel the cool water lapping at your knees as you wrestle with long, slippery reeds. The air is filled with the earthy scent of wetland plants, the rhythmic swish of cutting blades, and the low murmurs of teamwork. Your hands become adept at pulling the reeds taut, at weaving the natural fibers into a secure, floating platform. This initial layer was then covered by more reeds, laid crosswise, compacted, and sometimes even topped with soil or mud from the lake bed. Over time, the lower layers of reeds, submerged in the water, would begin to rot and decompose, forming a dense, peat-like mass that became increasingly solid. This decomposition was not a weakness but a strength, adding to the island's mass and stability. It was a slow, organic transformation, turning ephemeral plants into something approaching solid ground. The constant need for replenishment was a defining characteristic of these reed islands. You would learn early that these homes were alive, requiring continuous care. Each week, perhaps each month, new layers of reeds would be added to the surface, compensating for the natural decay below. This ongoing maintenance was not a chore but a shared rhythm of life, a collective act of sustaining their very existence. You would watch the elders, their movements economical and practiced, as they demonstrated the precise way to layer fresh reeds, how to secure them against the currents, how to ensure the island's longevity. But reeds were not the only foundation. In many regions, particularly in vast deltas or shallow, marshy lakes, nature offered another incredible starting point: the floating mats of vegetation formed by dense root systems. These natural islands, sometimes called sud in the Nile or pezzonales in other wetlands, were essentially masses of intertwined plant roots and accumulated organic matter, strong enough to support human weight. Imagine encountering one of these natural floating islands. You see a seemingly solid patch of land, perhaps covered in grasses or small shrubs, drifting slowly on the water. It is not an illusion. Below the surface, a thick, impenetrable mat of roots, sometimes several feet deep, holds the entire mass together, trapping pockets of air and light sediments, making it buoyant. These natural formations were often claimed and augmented by ancient communities. You might join others in guiding such a mat towards a desired location, perhaps anchoring it with long poles driven into the lake bed, or tethering it to the shore with ropes made from natural fibers. Once secured, it became a base, much like the meticulously constructed reed islands. Upon these root-bound platforms, homes were built, gardens cultivated, and hearths established. The natural stability of these deep root systems offered a slightly different sensation than the purely reed-based islands. You might feel less of the constant, subtle sway, experiencing a more grounded, though still buoyant, existence. Yet, even these natural wonders required human intervention, whether reinforcing their edges with woven reeds, or adding fresh soil to cultivate crops, or simply preventing them from drifting too far. The crafting of these floating homes was more than just a feat of engineering. It was a profound act of adaptation. You learned to live with the water, not against it. The island itself was a living entity, growing, decaying, and regenerating. The gentle creaking of the reeds beneath your floorboards, the soft lapping of water against the edges, these sounds became the lullabies of your nights, the soundtrack of your days. The constant interaction with the water shaped every aspect of life. You would learn to navigate your world not just by walking, but by observing the currents, understanding how wind affected your island, and knowing the deep places where anchoring poles could find purchase. Your home was not fixed but subtly alive, breathing with the lake. Consider the sense of community inherent in this existence. Building and maintaining a floating island was never a solitary endeavor. It required collective knowledge, shared labor, and mutual support. You would participate in the repair of neighbors' islands, just as they would assist with yours. The very fabric of society was interwoven with the reeds and roots that formed their foundations. When a storm threatened, every able body would work to reinforce the edges, to resecure the anchors, to pile on new reeds to absorb the shock of waves. This shared vulnerability and shared effort fostered an incredibly close-knit society. You would recognize the families by the unique weave of their reed platforms, by the particular angle of their dwellings, by the way their cooking fires sent plumes of smoke curling up into the morning mist, joining the 100 other plumes across the floating village. Each island, while distinct, was part of a larger, interconnected web of life. The strategic advantages of these floating constructions were manifold. Defense, for example. An island that could be moved or that naturally drifted, presented a fluid target to any aggressor. You could imagine the frustration of an invading force attempting to besiege a village that simply dispersed or retreated across the water. Resources too were abundant. The same reeds used for building also provided materials for boats, baskets, and even food. The water teemed with fish, and the surrounding wetlands offered birds and other sustenance. Yet this life also demanded resilience. A particularly harsh storm could tear an island apart. A flood could wash away precious soil. You lived in constant awareness of your environment, reading the signs of changing weather, understanding the ebb and flow of the waters that cradled your home. It was a life of constant vigilance, but also one of deep connection to the natural world. The quiet rise of these reed and root islands represents a triumph of human ingenuity over perceived limitations. Where others saw impenetrable swamps or vast, open water, these communities saw opportunity, a blank canvas for a new kind of dwelling. They took what nature provided in abundance, the flexible stems of reeds, the tenacious embrace of root systems, and fashioned not just houses, but entire villages, vibrant societies that thrived for centuries, sometimes millennia, on foundations that gently swayed with the rhythm of the water. You stand now on a platform born of patience and natural materials, feeling the cool air, hearing the subtle sounds of the lake. This calm, methodical crafting of ground from water, using nothing but the gifts of the wetland, is a testament to the quiet power of adaptation. It is a world where the very act of building was an ongoing conversation with the environment, a slow, deliberate dance of creation and maintenance. This deep history, built literally on the rise of reed and root, offers a profound insight into a way of life that embraced the fluidity of its world, creating stability from the most unlikely of materials. You begin to understand the extraordinary ingenuity required to look at a vast body of water and see not an obstacle, but a home. Imagine the first individuals who considered such a radical notion. What courage, what foresight, what deep connection to their environment must have driven them. Perhaps it was a need for protection, a natural moat against land-based threats. Perhaps the abundance of aquatic resources, fish and fowl, right on their doorstep. Or simply a lack of available dry land, pushing them to innovate, to expand their horizons onto the water's surface. You stand at the edge of the lake now, or perhaps wade in the shallows, cool water lapping your ankles. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and lush vegetation. Before you lies an expanse of reeds, tall and green, stretching towards the horizon. These are not merely plants, they are the very building blocks of a new world. The first step, the truly foundational moment, involved understanding these reeds. Not all reeds are created equal. They sought specific species, those with robust, buoyant stems and an intricate, tenacious root system. Think of the Tadora reeds of Lake Titicaca, the papyrus of ancient Egypt, or the phragmites found in wetlands across the globe. Each offered unique properties, but all shared the essential characteristics needed to defy gravity and float. You watch as strong, calloused hands move with a practiced rhythm. They are harvesting, not just cutting, but carefully selecting the mature, strongest reeds. Bundles are gathered, tied tightly with natural fibers, forming compact, buoyant rafts. This is not haphazard gathering. It is a meticulous craft, born of generations of observation and experimentation. Imagine the sheer physical effort. Countless bundles, each carefully inspected, then lashed together. You can almost feel the springiness underfoot as the first layers are laid. Picture a vast, interlocking mat, not unlike a gigantic organic mattress. The bundles are crisscrossed, woven, creating a lattice that distributes weight and prevents any single point from sinking too deeply. But a simple mat would drift. These early pioneers knew that. The secret to a truly stable floating island lay in its anchorage. You see long, sturdy poles, perhaps carved from denser, water-resistant wood, driven deep into the lake bed. These stakes, sometimes hundreds for a larger island, act like enormous pegs, tethering the new landmass to its watery foundation. You hear the rhythmic thud as they are pounded into place, a steady beat accompanying the creation of something permanent from something ephemeral. As more layers of reeds are added, a remarkable transformation occurs. The lower layers, submerged in water, slowly begin to decompose. But this decomposition is a strength, not a weakness. As the organic matter breaks down, it creates a rich, dense peat. This peat becomes increasingly solid, forming a robust, almost soil-like base beneath fresh layers of reeds. This continuous layering and natural consolidation allowed these islands to grow, to thicken, and to endure for centuries. You feel the subtle give and take beneath your feet. It is not the unwavering solidity of bedrock, but a gentle, resilient firmness. It is a living surface breathing with the lake. Initial dwellings were likely simple conical huts, constructed from the same abundant reeds, providing shelter from sun and rain. These early structures were lightweight, easy to construct, and easily repaired or rebuilt. Consider the children born on these islands, never knowing a truly static, unmoving world beneath their feet. Their playgrounds would have been the shimmering lake surface, their boundaries defined by the woven edges of their floating home. Walking would have been a nuanced dance, an unconscious adjustment to the gentle sway. As populations grew, so too did the islands. Smaller individual platforms, perhaps built by separate families, would be joined. You can envision the process. Two platforms carefully maneuvered side by side, then lashed together with strong ropes or interwoven with fresh reeds. Pathways would emerge, connecting different sections, creating a nascent village structure. Imagine the collaborative spirit, the shared knowledge, the collective effort to literally build and maintain an entire community on water. The challenges were immense. Storms could batter the islands, currents could tug at their anchors, and the constant threat of decomposition required ongoing maintenance. You hear stories of continuous harvesting, of new reed bundles constantly brought in to replenish the surface, to mend weak spots. It was a perpetual conversation with nature, a delicate balance of human ingenuity and environmental stewardship. But these challenges forged resilient communities. They learned to read the signs of the lake, to anticipate weather, to understand the subtle shifts in the water's mood. Their lives were intimately intertwined with the cycles of the wetland. Fishing techniques adapted to the abundant aquatic life, and agricultural practices innovated to grow crops on the surprisingly fertile reed beds. You walk further onto this nascent island, feeling the springy texture under your feet, hearing the soft rustle of reeds in the breeze. The air is fresh, carrying the scent of fresh water and green growth. You can almost taste the clean, clear air, feel the gentle vibrations of the water's surface through the ground you stand on. This is not just a place to live. It is a testament to human determination, a bold statement of adaptability. These first footprints on liquid earth were not tentative. They were firm, deliberate steps taken by people who saw possibility where others saw only water. They laid the groundwork, literally and figuratively, for societies that would not just survive, but flourish, defining a unique relationship between humanity and its environment. The floating villages, in their earliest form, were more than just shelters. They were declarations of independence, intricate ecosystems designed and sustained by human hands, living in harmony with the wild, dynamic heart of the wetland. You gaze out across the water, the sun glinting off its surface, reflecting on the profound knowledge these early settlers possessed. They were expert botanists, engineers, and navigators, all rolled into one. They understood the nuances of reed growth, knowing precisely when and how to harvest for regeneration. They mastered the physics of buoyancy and weight distribution, learning through trial and error how to create platforms that would not capsize or disintegrate. Imagine the tools they used, simple yet effective. Sharp cutting tools, perhaps obsidian blades or sharpened shells, for severing the dense reed stalks. Strong ropes woven from natural fibers, like agave or other plant materials, for binding bundles and lashing sections. Long, sturdy poles hewn from lakeside trees, for driving anchors deep into the muddy lake bed. Every tool was a direct extension of their environment, crafted from resources the lake and its shores provided. The construction of an island was rarely a solitary endeavor. It was a community project, requiring coordinated effort and shared expertise. You can picture groups of men and women working in unison, their movements synchronized, their voices perhaps exchanging rhythmic chants or instructions. The construction site was dynamic, constantly evolving. As one section was laid, another would be secured, and stability was continuously monitored. Even after the initial platform was established, the work was far from over. These floating islands were not static creations. They were living entities requiring constant care and maintenance. You learn the surface would periodically need replenishing with fresh layers of reeds, especially in areas of heavy foot traffic or rapid decomposition. This constant layering added to the island's thickness and resilience, a testament to the idea that a home could be something perpetually built and rebuilt. Think about the practicalities of daily life on such a foundation. Where did they source fresh water? Perhaps from freshwater springs feeding into the lake, or through ingenious rain-catching systems. How did they deal with waste? Natural decomposition played a role, but careful management was critical to maintaining the health of their aquatic environment. These were not just architectural feats, they were holistic ecological systems. You feel a sense of admiration for their resourcefulness. They weren't just living on the water, they were living with the water. Their homes moved with the currents, gently swayed by the breeze. They learned to build fires safely on a reed foundation, perhaps by creating compacted clay hearths or by isolating heat sources. Agricultural practices also adapted, with crops sometimes grown in portable plots of soil brought onto the island, or specific water-tolerant plants cultivated directly within the reed matrix. The sounds of the early village would have been distinct. The soft lapping of water against the reeds, the rustle of wind through the tall stalks, the cries of waterfowl, and the distant calls of fellow villagers. There would be no distant rumble of wagons on paved roads, no echoes from stone buildings. Instead, a pervasive sense of natural calm, punctuated by the sounds of human activity, weaving, fishing, the quiet hum of communal life. As you walk across this early imagined settlement, you can envision the gradual growth. One small island, perhaps a single family's dwelling, expanding to become a cluster of homes. Then the careful engineering to connect these clusters, forming bridges of reeds, pathways over the water. This was not haphazard growth. It was a deliberate, organic expansion, guided by a deep understanding of their materials and environment. The security these islands offered was paramount. Elevated above the shoreline, they provided an excellent vantage point for spotting approaching threats. Their watery perimeter offered a natural defense, making it difficult for land-based adversaries to launch a surprise attack. You realize the very design of their homes was a form of protection, built into the fabric of their lives. But beyond mere survival and defense, there was a profound sense of connection to their unique habitat. These islanders developed a unique culture, traditions, and spiritual beliefs intertwined with the lake. The water was not just a resource, it was a partner, a provider, a living entity that supported their existence. Their art, stories, and songs would undoubtedly reflect this intimate relationship with their liquid earth. You sensed the enduring legacy of these initial choices. The first footprints, though made on a constantly shifting surface, left an indelible mark on human history. They demonstrated that perceived limitations can be transformed into opportunities, that ingenuity can overcome scarcity, and that a deep, respectful engagement with nature can lead to truly remarkable and sustainable ways of life. These forgotten villages, built on foundations of reeds and roots, offer a powerful reminder of humanity's boundless capacity for adaptation and innovation, particularly when faced with the extraordinary challenge of making a home where none seemed possible. This pioneering spirit, this willingness to literally build ground where there was only water, shaped entire civilizations. It was a quiet revolution, a testament to the power of observation, collaboration, and an unwavering belief in creating stability from the most unlikely and most beautiful of materials. You stand here, feeling the ancient rhythm of the lake, acknowledging the deep wisdom of those who first dared to call the water home. You feel the gentle rise and fall beneath your bare feet, a subtle rocking that is as constant as your own breath. The first sliver of dawn paints the eastern sky in hues of soft orange and muted rose, reflected across the vast, still surface of the lake. This is not the solid, unyielding earth you know. This is your home, a vast, woven mat of reeds and mud, breathing with the water itself. The very ground you stand upon is alive, a testament to an ingenious way of life. The morning chill gives way to the sun's warmth, coaxing you out of your reed-thatched dwelling. The air is fresh, carrying the clean scent of damp reeds and the faint, earthy aroma of the lake itself. You hear the soft lapping of water against the sides of the island, a perpetual lullaby that defines existence here. Then come the sounds of awakening, the murmur of voices, the creak of a small boat being launched, the rhythmic swish of a broom made from bundled reeds. You step outside onto a narrow pathway crafted from tightly bound reeds, reinforced with mud and supported by buoyant bundles beneath. This is the main thoroughfare of your floating village, a winding route that connects dwellings and communal spaces. To your left, a neighbor is already tending a small fire, the smoke curling lazily upwards, carrying the tantalizing smell of roasting fish. To your right, another is mending a fishing net, her fingers deftly weaving new cord into the intricate mesh, a lifetime of skill in every movement. The village awakens in concert with the sun. Children, their laughter echoing across the water, are already splashing at the edge of the island, learning to swim before they learn to truly run. They navigate miniature reed rafts with surprising agility, their small hands gripping the paddles with natural confidence. For them, the lake is not a barrier but a playground, a source of endless adventure and a classroom for essential life skills. Every game is a lesson in balance, navigation, and the rhythms of the water. Your day, like everyone else's, is intimately connected to the lake. The most critical task, often undertaken first thing in the morning, is fishing. You watch as the men and women of the village launch their slender canoes, crafted from bundled reeds and sealed with natural resins. They glide silently, barely disturbing the surface, their spears poised or their nets cast in wide, graceful arcs. They know these waters intimately, reading the subtle ripples, understanding the hidden pathways of the fish. The bounty of the lake is not just their food, it is the very lifeblood of the village, providing protein, oil, and materials for tools. Beyond fishing, the reeds themselves are fundamental. You might join others in the shallower parts of the lake, carefully cutting and bundling the tall, sturdy reeds that grow in abundance. These are the building blocks of your world. They are used to expand the island, to repair homes, to weave mats for sleeping and sitting, to craft baskets for storage, and even to build the very boats that sustain life. The methodical cutting, drying, and weaving of reeds is a constant, communal activity, binding the community together in shared labor. Your home, like all others, is a simple, effective structure. The walls are woven reeds, often plastered with a mixture of mud and clay for insulation and stability. The roof is thickly thatched, offering protection from sun and rain. Inside, it is surprisingly cool even on the hottest days and remarkably dry. Furnishings are minimal: woven mats for sleeping, clay pots for cooking and storage, and a small, centrally located hearth where a fire is carefully managed, its smoke vented through a hole in the roof. Every element is designed for efficiency and resilience in this unique environment. The structure of the island itself is a marvel of engineering. You see how the homes are strategically placed, perhaps slightly elevated on smaller reed platforms to keep them dry. You observe the ingenious network of channels and smaller floating pathways that act as roads and alleys, allowing canoes to move freely within the village. Large anchors, often weighted stones tied to sturdy ropes, keep the entire island stable, preventing it from drifting too far with the lake's currents. However, a slight, almost imperceptible drift is a part of life, a gentle journey across the vast expanse of water. Later in the day, the village turns to craftsmanship and community. Women gather to weave intricate patterns into mats, their fingers moving with practiced grace. Men might be repairing a canoe, carefully patching a leak with resin, or sharpening tools made from bone or stone. Storytelling is an essential part of the day, particularly in the cooler afternoon hours or around evening fires. Elders recount tales of their ancestors, of legendary catches, and of the wisdom passed down through generations about living in harmony with the lake. You sit and listen, absorbed by the oral history that binds this community to its past. Food preparation is often a communal affair. Freshly caught fish might be grilled over an open fire, dried in the sun, or smoked for preservation. Edible aquatic plants and roots gathered from the lake are often added, providing essential nutrients and variety. The simple act of sharing a meal as the sun begins its descent, paints the water in fiery hues of orange and purple, strengthens the bonds between families and neighbors. As dusk settles, the sounds of the village begin to soften. The laughter of children fades, replaced by the quiet hum of insects and the distant calls of nocturnal birds. The fires glow warmly from within the reed dwellings, casting dancing shadows on the water. You feel the constant, gentle rocking of the island, a comforting rhythm that has been with you since birth. It is a profound sense of peace, of being utterly connected to your environment, of living in a world where the water is not merely around you, but beneath you, supporting every aspect of your existence. This life, while seemingly simple, demands constant vigilance and deep respect for the natural world. Storms can brew quickly, and the community must work together to secure homes and maintain the integrity of their floating home. But in the quiet moments, in the shared labor, in the laughter of children, you sense a deep contentment. This is a life built on ingenuity, resilience, and an unwavering connection to the water, a drifting dream sustained by collective will and a profound understanding of their unique world. You have found peace in the gentle sway of your island home, a peace born of ingenuity and a profound connection to the water. But this connection runs deeper than just shelter. It is the very source of life, the silent provider that feeds your body and nourishes your spirit. To live here, to truly thrive, you must become intimately familiar with the rhythm of the lake, not just for its beauty but for its bounty. Imagine the lake as a living pantry, a fertile ground hidden beneath the surface. For generations, your people have understood that while the land beneath your feet is always shifting, the earth itself, rich and dark, lies just out of sight, ready to be called upon. The concept of soil takes on a new meaning here, one that requires effort and a deep respect for the lake's offerings. You rise with the sun, the early morning mist clinging to the reeds that fringe your island. The air is cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and fresh water. Today is a day for the harvest, a different kind of harvest than those known by people on solid ground. Your tools are simple: long poles, woven baskets, and hands calloused from years of careful labor. You step into a small flat-bottomed boat, its surface barely disturbing the glassy water. Nearby, other boats are already moving, heading towards the designated farming areas. These are not fields in the traditional sense. They are floating gardens, meticulously constructed and maintained, a testament to the community's enduring skill. These gardens begin with the lake bed itself. Long ago, your ancestors discovered that the rich, dark mud at the bottom of the lake, teeming with nutrients from decomposed plant matter and fish waste, was incredibly fertile. But how to bring it to the surface? The answer lies in patient, backbreaking work. Using long poles fitted with scoop-like nets, villagers carefully dredge up handfuls of this nutrient-rich soil. It is a slow process, a communal dance with the water. Once gathered, this precious mud is brought back to specially prepared platforms. These platforms are often extensions of the main island, or smaller, dedicated floating rafts constructed from interwoven reeds and sturdy aquatic plants. On these platforms, the mud is carefully layered, mixed with decaying vegetation from the lake's edges, creating a surprisingly robust and fertile growing medium. It is an ongoing project, a continuous act of creation, slowly building up the very ground that sustains them. Look around you now as you approach one of these floating gardens. The vibrant green of various plants contrasts sharply with the deep blue of the lake. Here you see rows of water spinach, its glossy leaves glistening with dew. Further along, the broad leaves of taro plants reach skyward, their roots anchoring firmly into the submerged soil. There are even patches of a unique, hardy variety of rice, adapted over generations to thrive in these perpetually moist conditions. The air is filled with the soft rustling of leaves and the gentle lapping of water against the sides of the floating beds. You join a group already at work. An elderly woman, her face creased with wisdom, expertly plucks the ready leaves of water spinach, placing them into a basket by her side. Her movements are fluid, practiced, economical. She gestures to you, inviting you to join. You bend low, feeling the cool, damp earth between your fingers. The soil, though constantly moist, is not waterlogged in a way that drowns the plants. It breathes, supported by the clever construction of the reed platforms that allow excess water to drain while retaining essential moisture. You learn to distinguish the mature leaves from the younger ones, to pluck with a gentle twist that encourages further growth, ensuring a continuous supply. This is not a single grand harvest, but a series of smaller, continuous gleanings throughout the year. The lake provides, and in return you nurture it, ensuring its continued generosity. The waste from the plants, any trimmings or inedible parts, are returned to the water, becoming food for fish or decomposing to enrich the lake bed once more. It is a closed loop, a perfect example of sustainable living, long before the word itself was ever coined. As you work, the sun climbs higher, warming your back. The conversation among the villagers is soft, punctuated by laughter and the occasional call of a bird. Children splash playfully in the shallower waters nearby, sometimes helping with the lighter tasks, their small hands already learning the ancient ways. This is education by immersion, a practical wisdom passed down through generations. Beyond the visible gardens, the lake itself offers a bounty of its own. Fish are a crucial part of the diet, caught in simple traps or with nets woven from reeds. Sometimes you see families tending to small enclosures, fostering certain species of fish to ensure a steady supply. The synergy is profound. The fish help fertilize the floating gardens and the plants provide shade and shelter for the fish. The stillness of this harvest is profound. There is no urgency, no frantic rush. It is a rhythm dictated by nature, by the growth of the plants, by the needs of the community. Every leaf, every root, every grain is valued, not just as sustenance but as a gift. This is why it sustains not just bodies but souls. Consider the feeling of security that comes with this self-sufficiency. In a world where many depend on distant markets and complex supply chains, your community grows much of what it needs, right here on the water. This independence fosters a deep sense of resilience and collective strength. You are not at the mercy of distant forces. You are reliant on your own ingenuity and the generosity of your immediate environment. At the end of the morning, your basket is full, heavy with the fresh produce. You return to your island, the small boat laden with the day's offerings. The aroma of fresh greens fills the air. Back in the village, the women gather to prepare the day's meals. The water spinach will be lightly steamed or stir-fried with fragrant herbs found along the lake's edge. The taro roots will be boiled or roasted, providing a hearty, starchy staple. You watch as the food is prepared. The vibrant colors of the freshly harvested produce a testament to the lake's vitality. The communal kitchens are alive with activity, the sounds of chopping and gentle simmering. Stories are shared, laughter rings out, and the day's labor transforms into a shared feast. Eating together, you taste the efforts of your community, the very essence of your floating world. Each mouthful is a connection to the sun, the water, and the fertile mud from the lake bed. There is a primal satisfaction in knowing where your food comes from, in having been a part of its journey from the submerged soil to your plate. This harvest is more than just food, it is a way of life, a philosophy. It teaches patience, cooperation, and a deep, abiding respect for the delicate balance of the ecosystem. It reminds you that even on a seemingly precarious foundation, life can flourish, sustained by innovation and a profound understanding of one's place within the natural world. The sun begins to set, casting long golden reflections on the water. The day's work is done, the village is fed, and a quiet contentment settles over the floating islands. As you sit by your dwelling, listening to the soft sounds of the evening, you understand that the stillness of this unique harvest is not just about the quiet act of gathering food. It is about the stillness of a soul at peace, knowing it is connected, provided for, and deeply rooted in its extraordinary watery home. It is the profound tranquility that comes from living in harmony with the world, coaxing life from the depths, and sharing its bounty with those you call family. This sustenance, drawn from the hidden depths, nourishes not only the body, but the very spirit of your resilient people, ensuring that their drifting dream continues, generation after generation, on the surface of the silent, life-giving lake. As the soft light of evening settles over your floating village, painting the water a deep, tranquil blue, the work of the day does not entirely cease. The sun has dipped below the horizon and the air cools gently, but inside the dwellings and in the sheltered spaces between them, another kind of essential labor begins, or perhaps continues from the day. This is the quiet industry of hands, the silent arts that transform the raw gifts of the lake into the necessities of life itself. You step into the gentle hum of activity, a rhythm distinct from the energetic harvesting you witnessed earlier. Here the focus is inward, meticulous, and deeply personal. You observe the women, some aged with wisdom etched into their faces, others young and still learning, their fingers moving with a practiced grace that speaks of generations of knowledge passed down. Their work is an extension of the lake, drawing materials directly from its rich embrace. The primary medium for these silent arts is the common reed, the very plant that provides the foundation for your island homes. But here it is not merely structural. You see bundles of reeds laid out to dry in the sun during the day, their stalks transforming from vibrant green to a pale, resilient gold. They are carefully selected for length, thickness, and flexibility, each one holding the potential for a new purpose. Imagine yourself sitting beside an elder, her hands a blur of motion. She takes a dried reed, strips away its outer layers with a swift, economical flick of her thumb, revealing the pliable, fibrous core. Other reeds are split lengthwise, their segments then woven and interwoven. The air around her carries a faint, dry scent of vegetation, earthy and clean. You can almost feel the smooth, cool texture of the reed as her fingers manipulate it, bending it to her will. From these simple reeds, an astonishing array of objects takes shape. You watch as a large mat is slowly formed, each strand patiently braided and then joined to others, creating a surface both strong and surprisingly comfortable. These mats will serve as floors within your dwelling, insulating you from the chill of the water below, or as sleeping surfaces, providing a soft bed at the end of a long day. You can imagine yourself lying upon one, feeling the gentle give of the woven fibers, a natural mattress formed from the very plants that sustain your home. But the reeds yield more than just mats. You see intricate baskets emerging from deft hands, some wide and shallow for carrying fish or collecting vegetables, others tall and narrow for storing dried provisions. The technique is a continuous spiral, the reeds coiled tightly and then stitched together with finer strands of reed or tough plant fibers. The edges are often reinforced, making them durable enough to withstand the rigors of daily use. You understand that each basket is not just a container, it is a testament to the ingenuity and resourcefulness of your people, a small sculpture of necessity. Beyond the weaving of reeds, other materials are skillfully utilized. Stronger, darker fibers are extracted from specific water plants, perhaps the broad leaves of certain lily pads, carefully dried and then twisted into robust ropes and cords. You observe a young man patiently rolling strands between his palm and thigh, creating a continuous length of rope that will be used for mooring boats, securing dwelling components, or crafting fishing nets. The rhythmic friction of his hands against the fibers creates a subtle, almost hypnotic sound. These fishing nets are masterpieces of patient labor. Fine, strong twine is knotted into an intricate mesh, each knot precise and purposeful. You see nets of varying sizes, some delicate enough for small fish, others robust for larger catches. The creation of a net is a communal endeavor, with several individuals working on different sections, their conversations low and murmured, punctuated by the soft click of bone needles as they weave the strands. When a net is complete, it is stretched taut, inspected for flaws and then soaked, often in a mixture of tannins from local barks, which darkens the fibers and helps preserve them against the constant dampness of the lake. Consider the tools themselves. They are simple, elegant in their practicality, often fashioned from the same materials they are used to process. Bone needles, sharpened pieces of shell or obsidian for cutting, and smooth, water-worn stones for pounding and shaping. There are no elaborate machines, no clanking gears. The efficiency comes from human skill, from hands that have learned their craft through countless hours of repetition and the quiet guidance of elders. As you wander further through the village, the low light reveals other expressions of these silent arts. You notice the smooth, dark surfaces of ceramic pots, carefully crafted from clay sourced from the lake bed or carried in from the nearby shore. These pots, fired in simple open pits, are essential for cooking, for boiling lake water to make it safe for drinking, and for storing grains or dried fish. You might see a small child decorating a newly fired pot with simple patterns scratched into the surface before firing, learning the earliest lessons of craft and beauty. The dwellings themselves, while built primarily from reeds, incorporate elements of these silent arts. You see woven panels that serve as interior walls, providing privacy and a measure of insulation. Doors are often simple woven screens, easily rolled up or pushed aside. Even the small, stable platforms used for cooking often feature a base of intricately woven reeds, reinforced and packed with clay to create a fire-resistant surface. You realize that every object in this village, from the largest mat to the smallest fishhook, tells a story of human ingenuity and deep connection to the environment. There is little waste here. Every fiber, every segment of reed, every piece of bone is valued and utilized. When an item reaches the end of its useful life, it often returns to the lake, biodegrading naturally, completing a cycle of life, utility, and decay. The atmosphere during these quiet working hours is one of focused contemplation. There is little overt chatter, but a rich tapestry of shared presence. Perhaps an old woman hums a soft, ancient melody as her fingers fly over the reeds. A younger woman listens intently to the subtle rasp of the fibers, internalizing the rhythm of the craft. Children play nearby, sometimes mimicking the adult movements with their own small hands, shaping bits of reed into rudimentary toys. This quiet crafting is not merely about production. It is about community, about the transmission of culture. Each woven mat, each sturdy basket, each carefully knotted net carries with it the invisible thread of tradition, connecting the present generation to all who came before. It is a tangible expression of their resilient spirit, a constant reminder that even on a floating island surrounded by water, they are capable of building, creating, and sustaining a rich and meaningful existence. You feel a profound respect for the hands that shape this world. Their movements are simple, yet they create complexity. Their actions are silent, yet they speak volumes about adaptability, perseverance, and the timeless artistry of a people living in profound harmony with their watery realm. As the last light fades and the stars begin to emerge, you understand that these simple hands engaged in their silent arts are not just making objects. They are weaving the very fabric of their lives, thread by painstaking thread, ensuring the continuity of their extraordinary floating dream. You have witnessed the quiet artistry that sustains an individual floating home. Now, let your gaze expand beyond the immediate perimeter of a single island. Imagine the entire expanse of the lake, not as a void between land masses, but as a vibrant, intricate tapestry woven with invisible threads of connection. This is a world where the water itself is the highway, the great unifying force, a shimmering liquid road that binds a multitude of lives into a single cohesive civilization. In this realm, the concept of a road, as you understand it, a fixed path of earth or stone, simply does not exist. Instead, every boat is a vehicle on an ever-shifting, boundless thoroughfare. You hear the rhythmic dip and pull of paddles, the soft splash as a pole pushes against the lake bed. These are the sounds of daily transit, the constant hum of life moving across the water. Small, slender canoes, some no more than hollowed logs, dart between reeds like agile fish. Larger, more robust vessels, laden with goods, move with a steady purpose, their occupants skilled navigators from birth. You see a woman in a wide-brimmed hat expertly guiding her canoe, a basket of freshly caught fish balanced precariously at her bow. She is headed towards a neighboring cluster of islands, perhaps to trade her catch for woven mats or essential tools. Her journey is not a solitary endeavor, but a regular part of the daily pulse of this community. She knows the subtle currents, the reliable depths, the shortest routes. The lake is her map, its surface her guide. Consider the complexity of sustaining an entire society built on such fluidity. How do these dispersed homes communicate? How do they trade? How do they gather for celebrations or even for defense? The answer lies in an extraordinary reliance on ingenuity and a profound understanding of their aquatic environment. At dawn, you might observe the first streaks of light illuminating the lake, revealing a scattering of boats already in motion. Some carry children, making their way to a central floating schoolhouse, where lessons are learned with the gentle rocking of the water as a constant companion. Others transport elders, visiting relatives in distant villages, their journey a testament to the enduring bonds of family that transcend physical separation. The market, when you discover it, is a spectacle unlike any terrestrial bazaar. It is not a fixed square but a gathering of boats, often congregating in a sheltered cove or a naturally calm expanse of water. Imagine dozens, perhaps hundreds of canoes and rafts drawn together, their occupants engaged in a vibrant exchange. You hear the joyful din of voices, the haggling over prices, the greetings of friends and neighbors who might not see each other for days or even weeks. Here, a farmer from one island offers his bountiful harvest of lake-grown vegetables, greens that thrive in nutrient-rich waters, for the exquisite craftsmanship of a basket weaver from another. You might find fishermen selling their catches, their shimmering hauls laid out on woven mats, alongside artisans displaying their intricate carvings or the vibrant textiles dyed with natural pigments. Goods that are common on one island might be scarce on another, creating a dynamic web of commerce that ensures every village has access to what it needs. News travels across this watery expanse with surprising speed. A shout carried on the wind, a distinctive drumbeat echoing over the water, or a messenger paddling with urgency, these are the newspapers and telegraphs of this roadless realm. A birth, a death, a wedding, the arrival of outsiders, or a particularly good fishing season. All these tidings ripple through the community, connecting everyone to the collective experience. Even governance takes on a unique character. Decisions affecting the entire community, such as managing shared resources or coordinating defenses against rival groups or natural dangers, often require gatherings of village elders. These councils convene not in a central hall, but perhaps on a particularly large, stable floating island, or even in a specially designated cluster of boats. You envision the solemn faces, the thoughtful discussions, the consensus forged amidst the gentle lapping of waves. Think of the sheer logistics involved in organizing communal projects. Building a new, larger communal platform, repairing storm damage, or launching a collective fishing expedition requires coordinated effort across multiple floating communities. It is a testament to their deep-seated cooperation and shared identity that such endeavors are not only possible but commonplace. The connections are not merely practical, they are deeply cultural and spiritual. Festivals and ceremonies are monumental events, drawing people from all corners of the lake. Imagine a moonlit night, the water alive with the soft glow of lanterns illuminating hundreds of canoes converging on a central celebration point. You hear the rhythmic music, the celebratory songs, the laughter and chatter of a people united in joy. These gatherings are not just parties, they are reaffirmations of their shared heritage, their resilience, and their belonging to this extraordinary watery world. You might even see evidence of inter-island marriages, binding families and strengthening alliances across the lake. A young woman leaving her home island might embark on a new life in a village a day's paddle away, her journey a symbolic bridging of communities. These personal connections are the strongest threads in the watery web, creating a dense, interwoven social fabric that holds everything together. The lake, which might seem an obstacle to an outsider, is for these people the very essence of their interconnectedness. It is the medium through which they live, work, and thrive. It shapes their language, influences their customs, and dictates the rhythm of their lives. It is a constant, ever-present reminder that they are part of something larger than their individual homes. A vast, living network of islands, people, and traditions, all bound by the shimmering embrace of the water. You begin to understand that the term floating village is almost a misnomer. This is not a collection of isolated points, but a sprawling, dynamic metropolis of water and woven reeds, where every ripple carries a message, every boat journey is a connection, and every horizon reveals another piece of their incredible, interconnected world. The quiet hands you observed earlier, weaving their mats and nets, are not just building homes. They are maintaining the very arteries of this unique civilization, ensuring its lifeblood flows freely across its liquid heart. They are the architects of a roadless realm, where community thrives not despite the water, but because of it. It is a profound realization, one that shifts your entire perception of what a society can be. This fluid existence, this mastery of a roadless world, is perhaps their greatest innovation. It speaks to a level of adaptation and communal spirit that few landbound cultures can truly comprehend. As the sun sets once more, casting long shadows across the water, you feel the gentle sway of the lake beneath you, a subtle reminder of the constant motion that defines this interconnected reality. The distant calls, the faint lights of other villages twinkling across the expanse, confirm that you are truly within the heart of a vibrant, living network, a testament to the enduring power of human connection, even in the most unconventional of landscapes. The enduring power of human connection you felt earlier, the tangible fabric of their daily lives, is woven through with threads less visible but equally strong, the stories they tell. As the night deepens over the water, and the distant lights of other villages grow softer in the encroaching mist, a different kind of illumination takes hold. It is the glow of memory, the flickering warmth of shared imagination, keeping ancient narratives alive. Here on the water, where the boundaries between land and sky, known and unknown, often blur in the swirling fog, myths are not just tales. They are echoes of the very environment, whispered truths that shape how people perceive their world. You find yourself drawn to the central communal platform of the village, where a low fire crackles, sending sparks dancing into the humid air. The air itself feels heavy with unspoken histories, with the weight of generations who have navigated these very waters. Elders, their faces etched with the wisdom of countless sunsets and sunrises over the lagoon, gather around. Their voices, soft and rhythmic, begin to weave narratives that transport you beyond the immediate present, back to the dawn of this watery world. These are not merely bedtime stories. They are the living history of a people, their science, their religion, their moral code, all intertwined and passed down through the hypnotic cadence of spoken word. Imagine the beginning as told by a venerable storyteller whose gaze seems to pierce the veil of time. You learn of a time when the world was entirely water, an endless, shimmering expanse. From this primordial soup, a great spirit emerged, a benevolent being shaped like a giant, shimmering fish whose scales were the first stars. With its powerful tail, it stirred the depths, coaxing mud and reeds to rise, forming the very first floating islands. These islands, they say, were not built by human hands alone but guided into existence by the spirit's unseen currents. This foundational myth speaks volumes about their relationship with the lake, not as a resource to be exploited, but as a living, sacred entity. Another popular cycle of tales revolves around the mischievous water sprites and the wise, ancient crocodiles. You hear of the time when a particularly cunning sprite, jealous of human ingenuity in building homes upon the water, tried to lure the islands away into the deeper, more dangerous parts of the lagoon. It took the combined wisdom of the village elders and the slow, deliberate counsel of the oldest crocodile, a creature said to be as ancient as the lake itself, to outsmart the sprite and anchor the islands firmly once more. These stories serve as both entertainment and powerful cautionary tales, teaching respect for the unseen forces of nature and the importance of collective wisdom over individual cunning. As the mists begin to thicken around the edges of the firelight, obscuring the distant lights, you hear the tales of the mist walkers, ethereal figures said to wander the lagoon on the densest of foggy nights. These are not malevolent spirits, but rather the lost souls of those who perished at sea, forever searching for their way home. Storytellers recount how their faint calls can sometimes be heard carried on the wind, a mournful echo guiding or sometimes misguiding those who venture out after dark. It is a potent reminder of the inherent dangers of their watery world, instilling both caution and a deep sense of empathy for those who have gone before. The legends also speak of great heroes, not of battles on land, but of epic journeys across the vast lake, navigating treacherous storms and discovering new fertile fishing grounds. You hear of a legendary fisher, a woman of extraordinary skill and courage, who once navigated her small craft through a week-long tempest, guided only by the songs of the ancient birds. She returned not only with a bountiful catch but with the knowledge of a hidden cove, rich in resources, which saved her village from starvation during a lean season. These tales celebrate resilience, resourcefulness, and a profound understanding of the lake's ever-changing moods. They are beacons of inspiration, showing how human spirit, combined with an intimate knowledge of their environment, can overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. There are also the stories about the creation of the floating gardens, the very heart of their sustenance. One myth tells of a time when the islands were barren and hunger loomed. A young dreamer, guided by a vision received in a dream, began to weave reeds together in a new way, planting seeds directly into the floating mat. The other villagers scoffed, but slowly, miraculously, the seeds sprouted. The dreamer's belief, combined with the earth spirit, encouraged the plants to flourish, transforming the barren water into a vibrant, food-producing haven. This myth not only explains the origin of a crucial agricultural practice but also instills the value of innovation, persistence, and the belief in the unseen forces that nurture life. Through these narratives, you begin to grasp the spiritual core of this civilization. The lake is not merely their home, it is their provider, their protector, and the source of their deepest mysteries. Every ripple, every gust of wind, every fish that jumps from the water carries with it a fragment of these ancient stories. They explain the unexplainable, comfort the afraid, and bind the community together with a shared understanding of their place in the universe. The myths teach respect for the intricate balance of nature, the delicate interdependence of all living things within their watery ecosystem. They are the living memory of a people, passed from one generation to the next, as vital as the water itself. As the elder's voice softens and the fire begins to die down, you are left with a profound sense of the story's enduring power. You realize that to truly understand this civilization, you must listen not just to the sounds of their daily lives, but to the whispers of their past, carried on the very mists that rise from the lagoon. These tales are not static historical records. They are fluid, adaptable, living entities that shift and change slightly with each retelling, reflecting the wisdom and experience of the present generation while honoring the echoes of the past. They are the soul of the forgotten villages, floating on islands of water, built on islands of shared dreams and enduring legends. You feel the gentle night air, cool and damp, and for a moment, you almost expect to hear a mist walker's faint call, or see the glimmer of a water sprite's mischievous eye in the deepening shadows. It is an extraordinary experience to be enveloped by such profound and ancient narratives, here on the water's edge. You have felt the weight of their stories, the ancient pulse of a civilization woven into the very fabric of their watery home. Now, as the morning sun begins to chase away the last vestiges of night mist, you begin to perceive another dimension of their existence, the slow, inexorable march of time itself. Here on these floating islands, time does not rush. It drifts, much like the currents beneath your feet. You notice the subtle signs first. The way a wooden platform, meticulously crafted decades ago, shows the gentle wear of countless seasons. The intricate patterns of algae and moss that cling to the lower edges of the dwellings, recording the water levels and the passage of years in vibrant greens and muted browns. Unlike a stone city, fixed and rigid, these villages are in a constant, subtle state of flux. Every structure, every pathway, every tether to the earth or to a neighboring island, is a testament to ongoing maintenance, to a continuous conversation with the elements. Imagine yourself observing the elders of the community. Their faces, etched with the wisdom of many cycles of the sun and moon, tell a story of resilience that goes beyond mere survival. They embody a profound understanding of impermanence and renewal. A home might stand for generations, yet its individual planks might be replaced many times over, each replacement a silent acknowledgement of the slow tide of decay and the persistent effort of preservation. It is a philosophy of living with change, not fighting against it. You see their hands, gnarled and strong, working diligently not just to build, but to perpetually rebuild, to mend, to strengthen. This is not a task born of desperation, but of deep respect for their legacy and their future. The internal stillness of these communities is palpable, almost a physical presence that calms your own hurried thoughts. Away from the clamor of land-based cities, the constant demands of the shore, life here unfolds with a rhythmic predictability. The soft lapping of water against the pontoons becomes a natural clock, marking the hours. The calls of marsh birds signal dawn and dusk. There are no sudden jolts of traffic, no distant rumbling of wagons. Instead, the world moves with the quiet grace of a paddle slicing through water, the gentle sway of a floating garden, the hushed murmur of conversation carried on the breeze. You realize that this internal stillness is not merely an absence of noise, but a deep-seated cultural reverence for contemplation and connection. Here, every interaction seems more deliberate, every decision more considered. The community functions as a tightly knit unit, its members attuned to each other's needs, their lives intertwined by the very nature of their shared, precarious existence. Conflicts are resolved through patient discussion, disagreements smoothed over with the wisdom of generations. The stillness allows for an introspection, a collective consciousness, that might be lost in a more bustling environment. Yet, this internal tranquility does not mean complete isolation. The villages, though geographically distinct, are not entirely sealed off from the external world. You begin to notice the subtle echoes from beyond the lagoon. Perhaps it is in the occasional glint of a tool made from a metal not found locally, hinting at trade routes that stretched beyond the immediate marshes. Or the rare, exotic spice, its aroma unfamiliar, carried by a passing merchant boat. These are the external echoes, faint but persistent, reminding you that even these forgotten islands were part of a larger tapestry of human interaction. Consider the history of their exchanges. Did mainland kingdoms ever attempt to exert influence? Did explorers stumble upon these hidden havens? The answers are often whispered in fragmented tales, in the subtle shifts in architectural styles over centuries, or in the rare artifact unearthed from beneath a particularly ancient dwelling. You might hear of a time when the floating villages served as crucial intermediaries in trade, connecting distant regions across impassable wetlands. They would act as silent navigators, their knowledge of the labyrinthine waterways unrivaled, their hospitality a welcome respite for weary travelers. Imagine yourself at a small, impromptu market on one of the larger floating platforms. Here you might see goods from the distant interior, perhaps finely woven textiles, or unique types of pottery, bartered for the specialized products of the lagoon. Dried fish, intricately carved shell ornaments, or rare medicinal plants harvested from the water's edge. The exchange is not just of goods, but of stories, of news, of perspectives. The merchants from the mainland bring tidings of distant empires, of changing political landscapes, of new technologies. These are digested slowly, discussed at length around communal fires, filtered through the unique lens of the floating villager's worldview. The impact of these external echoes is often subtle, rarely disruptive. The floating villages absorb what they find useful, adapt what fits their way of life, and politely decline what does not. They possess a remarkable cultural resilience, a core identity that remains steadfast even as small influences wash over them like gentle waves. You perceive a selective openness, a pragmatism born of necessity. New materials, if they prove more durable or efficient for building, are incorporated. New fishing techniques, if they increase yield without harming the ecosystem, are adopted. But the fundamental principles of their existence, their deep connection to the water, their communal ethos remain unbroken. The slow tide of time here also manifests in the landscape itself. The lagoon is not static. Silt deposits build up, currents shift, new channels form, old ones narrow. The villagers are intimately aware of these geological changes, adapting their island structures, reinforcing their foundations, or even, when necessary, relocating entire sections of their village. You can almost feel the collective memory of past floods, of fierce storms, of the relentless work required to maintain equilibrium with their environment. Their history is written not just in scrolls or stories, but in the very engineering of their homes, in the intricate network of their waterways, in the constant rebuilding and adaptation. This perpetual interaction with the environment fosters a unique relationship with time. There is no concept of a definitive, finished state. Everything is always in process, always evolving. A house is built, maintained, gradually renewed plank by plank, perhaps even moved to a new location as the water dictates. A garden is planted, harvested, replanted. The cycles are visible, tangible, directly influencing daily life. You understand that waiting is not merely an act of patience here. It is a fundamental aspect of their existence, a recognition that some processes cannot be rushed. The internal stillness, therefore, is not a passive acceptance, but an active engagement with these cycles. It is the calm focus of a carpenter replacing a worn beam, the meditative rhythm of a fisher casting a net, the quiet concentration of a weaver at their loom. These are not just tasks, they are expressions of a deep harmony with their surroundings. You begin to feel this harmony yourself, a slowing of your own internal pace, a greater awareness of the present moment. The urgent anxieties of the outside world seem to recede, replaced by a profound sense of continuity and peace. Even the way they pass down their history reflects this slow tide. The stories you heard earlier are not rigidly fixed. They flow, they adapt, they incorporate new experiences while holding on to the ancient truths. Each generation adds its own nuanced perspective, like new layers of sediment accumulating on the lagoon bed, enriching the foundation without altering its essence. You are witnessing a living history, breathed into existence by the collective memory of the community, sustained by their continuous narratives. As the sun climbs higher, casting shimmering reflections across the water, you feel a profound shift within yourself. The initial wonder at their unique architecture and ingenious way of life has deepened into an appreciation for their philosophical approach to existence. You are no longer just an observer of a forgotten past. You are a temporary inhabitant of a timeless present, connected to the quiet strength of a people who understood that true resilience lies not in resisting change, but in gracefully flowing with it, like the water that cradles their world. The external echoes are merely whispers on the wind, but the internal stillness is the deep, resonant hum of life itself, enduring and unwavering. You realize that to truly disappear, these villages would have to cease their constant conversation with time, and that is a conversation they have never truly ended. You have felt the deep, resonant hum of life within these floating villages, a continuous conversation with time. Yet even the most profound dialogues shift and change, sometimes gently fading into new forms of silence. Imagine, if you will, the slow, almost imperceptible current that begins to pull not just the islands, but the very fabric of their existence towards a different shore. This was not a sudden flood or a catastrophic storm, but rather a quiet, generational drifting away, as subtle and persistent as the water itself. You stand on what feels like solid ground now, a patch of earth perhaps hundreds of years after the peak of these aquatic settlements. The air carries the faint scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke, not the immediate tang of marsh and fresh water you once knew. What happened to that vibrant, floating world? It did not vanish in a dramatic collapse, but rather dissolved, piece by painstaking piece over many lifetimes. Consider the gentle erosion of a way of life. For generations, the children of the floating islands learned to read the water, to mend the reed mats, to fish with ancient traps. Their world was self-contained, yet intrinsically linked to the surrounding environment. But as seasons turned into decades and decades into centuries, the world beyond their watery horizons began to exert a different kind of pull. You can almost hear the soft whispers carried on the breeze, telling of different opportunities, of lands where the ground did not sway, where schools offered new lessons, and markets brimmed with goods not found in the water's bounty. The first departures were likely quiet, almost unnoticed by the larger community. Perhaps a young man, captivated by tales from a visiting trader, decided to seek his fortune on the mainland. He would build a small house on stable earth, plant a garden, and send word back to his family of his new life. Then, perhaps a daughter, wishing for a different kind of freedom, followed suit. You envision the small woven boats, laden with modest belongings, pushing off from the family island for the last time, not with fanfare, but with a hushed solemnity, the soft dip of paddles marking the final journey. This was not a mass exodus driven by famine or war. Instead, it was a series of individual choices, each one a tiny thread slowly unraveling from the intricate tapestry of the floating village. Imagine the parents watching their children go, not with despair but with a deep understanding. They had taught their offspring resilience, adaptability, and the wisdom to flow with change. Perhaps they saw these departures as another expression of that very philosophy. The water had always shown them that nothing remains fixed. You observe the subtle environmental shifts that also contributed to this gradual fading. Over centuries, river courses can alter, lakes can slowly fill with sediment, or ocean levels might subtly rise or fall. Perhaps the reeds that were once so abundant and vital for island construction began to thin in certain areas, or the fish populations that sustained them became less reliable. These were not sudden catastrophes, but slow, grinding pressures that made life on the water just a little bit harder, a little less certain for each successive generation. The maintenance of a floating village was an immense, continuous task. Repairing reed platforms, replacing worn ropes, strengthening mooring lines, constantly tending to the hydroponic gardens. These were daily acts of dedication. As fewer hands remained, as more young people chose the mainland, the burden grew heavier on those who stayed. You can almost feel the ache in your own back, imagining the endless labor required to keep an island afloat and productive, especially as the community dwindled. The skills, once passed down with meticulous care from elder to child, began to lose their urgency. Why master the intricate art of weaving buoyant reed mats if your future lay on solid ground? The specialized knowledge, honed over millennia, slowly began to dissipate, like mist rising from the water at dawn. You grasped that this was not a deliberate abandonment, but a natural consequence of shifting priorities and changing landscapes, both physical and cultural. Picture a grandmother, her hands gnarled from a lifetime of working with water and reeds, teaching her grandchild how to tie a complex knot. The child, however, might already be dreaming of a different kind of knot, one that binds a boat to a dock in a bustling port town, or one that ties threads on a loom in a mainland village. The knowledge still existed, but its direct application in the floating world was becoming less frequent, less necessary. As families left, the remaining islands felt a quiet emptiness. Homes once filled with laughter and the rhythmic sounds of daily life became silent. Their reed structures, no longer maintained, began to yield to the elements. The constant sun and water, once the partners in their creation, now became agents of their slow dissolution. You visualize a deserted island, its once vibrant green surface now turning brown, its edges fraying, slowly sinking back into the embrace of the water from which it was born. The last inhabitants were likely the most steadfast, the ones whose connection to the water was too deep to sever easily. You might imagine an elderly couple, the final residents of an island that once housed a dozen families, their faces weathered by sun and wind, their eyes holding the weight of generations. They continued their routines, fishing, mending, watching the sun rise and set over a horizon that held fewer and fewer familiar silhouettes. Their departure, when it finally came, would have been the quietest of all, perhaps a final journey to live with relatives on the mainland, or simply a slow fading away on the island itself. The water, which had been their cradle, their provider, their world, eventually reclaimed them, not violently but with a gentle, patient embrace. The physical structures of the villages dissolved, their organic materials returning to the earth and water. The carefully constructed reed platforms softened, broke apart, and became part of the very sediment that filled the lake bed or river delta. You see the land slowly taking over, marshes expanding, new plants growing where homes once floated. But even in their physical absence, these villages did not entirely disappear. Their memory lingered, carried in the oral traditions of the mainland communities, in the names of places, in the subtle ways that former islanders adapted to life on solid ground. You hear the echoes in a particular fishing technique, in a preference for certain plants, in a unique way of telling stories that hints at a world where the ground moved beneath your feet. The quiet departure was not an end, but a transformation. It was a testament to the impermanence that these people had always understood and embraced. They did not cling to a single form of existence, but allowed life to flow, to adapt, to change. Their legacy is not merely the ruins of floating homes, but the profound lesson in resilience and the graceful acceptance of life's ebb and flow. You realize that their conversation with time did not cease, but simply evolved, moving from the physical presence of their villages to the enduring whispers of their wisdom. You walk over what might have once been a floating island, now firm ground, perhaps covered by tall grasses or even a farmer's field. The exact location is uncertain, lost to the shifting landscape and the passage of centuries. Yet you feel it, the ghost of buoyancy beneath your feet, the faint echo of water lapping against reeds. The wind carries a distant memory of children's laughter and the gentle creak of woven homes. This quiet departure, this slow dissolution, stands in stark contrast to the often dramatic narratives of history. There were no battles, no grand declarations, no sudden catastrophes that obliterated these communities. Instead, it was a testament to a different kind of history, one shaped by small, personal decisions, by the gradual pull of opportunity, and by the relentless, yet gentle hand of nature. It was a history written in the patient erosion of reeds, the subtle shifting of currents, and the quiet migration of souls seeking new horizons. The lesson these generations impart is not about failure, but about intelligent adaptation. They understood that even the most ingenious solutions to living with water are not eternal. The world changes and people must change with it. Their departure was an act of continued wisdom, a conscious choice to seek harmony in a new form, rather than to resist the inevitable flow. You understand that true strength sometimes lies in knowing when to let go, when to allow a chapter to close, not with a bang, but with a soft, almost inaudible sigh. You contemplate the beauty of this graceful fading. Imagine the last family leaving their island, turning back for one final look. What did they see? Not a place of loss, but a place of incredible ingenuity, a home that had sustained their ancestors for countless years. They carried the spirit of the floating village within them, into their new lives on the land. The memory of the water's gentle embrace, the knowledge of living in perfect balance with their environment, the understanding of impermanence, these were their true inheritances, far more enduring than any reed platform. And so, the villages did not truly disappear. They transformed. Their essence seeped into the very landscape, into the stories told around evening fires, into the DNA of the people who once called the water home. You realize that by understanding their quiet departure, you gain an even deeper appreciation for their remarkable existence. It is a history not of fixed points, but of constant, graceful motion, much like the water that cradled their world. Their final act was perhaps their most profound teaching: to embrace change, to flow with time, and to leave only a gentle ripple behind. You have considered the graceful motion, the embrace of change, and the gentle ripple left behind. But even the softest ripple disturbs the water, sending unseen currents far below the surface. It is in these depths, within the layered silt and the whispered memories, that the true lingering shadows of the floating villages reside. You might imagine the surface of the lake now, calm and reflecting only the sky, perhaps a passing cloud or a bird in flight. Yet, beneath that placid exterior lies a silent archive, a history written not in ink but in erosion, in organic decay, and in the enduring patterns of life. Consider for a moment the very floor of the lake. Centuries have passed since the last woven reed platform drifted from its moorings or slowly sank back into the water that birthed it. What does time do to such a place? The water, a constant sculptor, layers fine sediment over everything. Each passing year, each flood, each storm, adds another thin veil. You envision reaching down, sifting through these layers. Your fingers might brush against something unexpectedly firm. Perhaps a fragment of pottery, a shard from a cooking vessel that slipped through the reeds and settled into the muck below. It is not whole, not a grand artifact, but a small, unassuming piece, testament to a meal once prepared, a life once lived, suspended in the cool, dark embrace of the lake bed. You imagine the archaeologists of the future, or perhaps even those working today with specialized underwater techniques, carefully mapping these submerged landscapes. They would not find grand stone foundations. The very nature of these homes precluded such permanence. Instead, they might uncover concentrations of certain materials, dense patches of decomposed organic matter, the faint but unmistakable outline of where a floating island once rested, its own bulk contributing to the accumulating sediment. The reeds themselves, though perishable, would leave a signature. Their carbonized remains, perhaps preserved in anaerobic conditions, could tell a story of ancient harvests, of specific types of reeds chosen for their strength and buoyancy. Think of the tools. A stone weight, once used to anchor a fishing net, now lies half buried in the silt. A fishing hook, perhaps made of bone or finely worked shell, gleaming faintly in the artificial light of an underwater camera. These are not treasures in the conventional sense, but they are profoundly intimate. They speak of daily effort, of sustenance, of the direct interaction between a human hand and the bounty of the lake. You can almost feel the calloused palm that once held that weight, the patient gaze that watched the line for a tug. Beyond the scattered artifacts, you consider the very shape of the lake's edges. The constant presence of human activity, even on floating structures, would have left its mark. Landing points along the shore, small clearings where temporary shelters or workshops might have stood, places where reeds were gathered and prepared. Even if these structures are long gone, the land itself would remember. Subtle changes in topography, slight depressions in the soil, areas where certain types of plants grew differently due to past human disturbance. You might walk along a winding path near the water's edge and feel a sense of something long established, a route worn smooth not by carts, but by generations of feet carrying bundles of reeds or freshly caught fish. Then there is the less tangible yet equally profound ecological shadow. The people of the floating villages were not merely inhabitants. They were participants in the lake's ecosystem. Their presence, their fishing methods, their cultivation of reeds, all shaped the environment around them. When they left, did the lake simply revert to an untouched state? Unlikely. The patterns of fish populations, for example, might have shifted. Certain species, perhaps overfished during the village's heyday, might have struggled to recover for decades. Other species, perhaps inadvertently protected by the villagers' practices, might have thrived. You consider the plant life. The massive reed beds that supplied the building materials for the islands. These were not wild, untouched forests. They were managed resources. The villagers understood the cycles of growth and harvest, ensuring a sustainable supply. When this management ceased, did the reed beds change? Perhaps they grew more dense in some areas, less so in others. The removal of human influence does not simply reset a system to zero. It introduces a new variable, creating new dynamics and different forms of ecological balance. The very composition of the lake bed, enriched by the slow decay of countless generations of reed platforms, would continue to nourish new growth, long after the last island dissolved. The whispers carry on the wind, not just over the water, but within the cultural fabric of the people who moved ashore. The transition from floating homes to solid ground was immense, yet it did not erase their unique heritage. You find yourself listening to the stories, the folklore, the proverbs passed down through generations. These tales might speak of an ancestor who could walk on water, a poetic way of describing their floating existence. They might recount myths of benevolent lake spirits, reflecting a deep respect and interdependence with their aquatic environment. Imagine a craftsman in a modern village, far from the lake's edge, weaving baskets or mats from local fibers. His hands move with an intuitive grace, a technique perhaps refined over centuries, stemming from the precise art of shaping reeds for buoyancy and stability. The patterns he weaves, the very rhythm of his work, might unconsciously echo the structural elegance of a long-vanished floating home. You see the subtle lines, the interlocked strength, a quiet homage to the ingenuity of his water-dwelling forebears. The language itself might hold clues. Certain words, specific idioms related to water, to floating, to movement with the currents, might persist in local dialects, even if their literal meaning is now slightly removed from daily experience. These linguistic echoes are like fossilized footprints, revealing a path taken long ago. You hear them in the cadence of speech, in the metaphors used to describe resilience or change, a subtle constant reminder of a liquid past. But perhaps the most profound lingering shadow is a sense of collective memory, a feeling of belonging that is both rooted in the land and yet still tethered to the water. The descendants of the floating villagers carry within them a unique perspective on impermanence and adaptability. They learn from their ancestors that home is not just a fixed structure, but a way of life, a relationship with an environment, a community bound by shared purpose. This understanding shapes their resilience, their ability to navigate change, their respect for the natural world. You might speak with an elder in a village nestled near the ancient lake. She may never have lived on a floating island herself, but her grandparents did. Her eyes, as she gazes across the water, hold a depth of understanding that transcends her own lifetime. She tells you of a quiet pride, a unique identity that comes from having such an extraordinary heritage. It is not just history, it is part of who they are, a deep current flowing beneath their modern lives. This heritage is not always overtly celebrated or even consciously recognized by every individual. Sometimes, it manifests as an instinctive wisdom, a quiet competence. Perhaps a particular skill in navigating small boats, an uncanny ability to read the weather patterns over the lake, or even a specific way of building a hut that subtly integrates elements of buoyancy and flexibility, harking back to a time when rigidity meant collapse. You realize that these are the true shadows beneath the surface. Not ghostly apparitions, but the persistent echoes of human ingenuity, cultural adaptation, and environmental interaction. They are the subtle shifts in the landscape, the almost imperceptible changes in local ecosystems, the enduring patterns in human behavior and thought. They are woven into the very fabric of existence in this region, a quiet testimony to a life lived in harmony with the water. The story of the forgotten floating villages does not end with their physical disappearance. It transforms, becoming a subterranean river of influence, shaping the land and its people in ways that are often unseen, yet always present. When you stand by the lake today, seeing only the tranquil surface, you now carry the knowledge of what lies beneath. A rich, complex tapestry of history, woven from water, reed, and human spirit, still gently stirring the depths. The ripples may have faded from sight, but their resonance continues, an enduring hum in the heart of the landscape, a quiet testament to a profound past. And in this realization, you find a new layer of appreciation for what it means for something to truly endure, not through fixed monument but through flowing essence. The profound past you now perceive, this rich, complex tapestry, was not merely absorbed by time, but tenderly reclaimed by the very forces that sustained it. The essence that flowed through the lives on these floating islands began a new journey, a slow, quiet transformation, as the living structures themselves softened, yielded, and ultimately dissolved back into the embrace of the natural world. Imagine standing on the shore, not in the bustling time of the villages, but years, perhaps decades, after the last residents had quietly departed. The vibrant hum of human activity has long since faded. The familiar paths across the water, once bustling with boats and the laughter of children, are now still, the surface of the lake undisturbed save for the gentle lapping of waves against forgotten edges. You see the first signs of this soft reclamation. The intricately woven reed mats, which formed the very foundation of these homes, begin to lose their rigid structure. Exposure to sun, rain, and the constant ebb and flow of the lake's currents starts a slow, deliberate unraveling. The tightly packed layers, once a testament to human ingenuity and communal effort, gradually loosen. Each individual reed, once part of a formidable collective, begins its return journey to its organic origins. Water is the primary sculptor in this transformation. It seeps into every crevice, softens every fiber, and carries away the finer particles. The buoyant air trapped within the reed bundles slowly escapes, replaced by water, until the once proud structures begin a gentle descent. Not a dramatic collapse, but a gradual, almost imperceptible sinking, a patient merging with the lake bed below. The wooden posts, driven deep to anchor the islands, once sturdy sentinels against the currents, also succumb. Their exposed sections are weathered by the elements, bleached by the sun, and gnawed by unseen aquatic life. Beneath the water, they become habitats for barnacles and algae, their structural integrity slowly compromised by the ceaseless work of microorganisms. The wood, once painstakingly shaped by human hands, begins to rot, returning its nutrients to the rich watery soil. As the human presence recedes, nature moves in with a silent determination. You observe new life taking root where human life once thrived. Drifting seeds, carried by the wind or currents, find purchase in the softening mats. Soon the first pioneer plants emerge, hardy water grasses, reeds similar to those from which the islands were built, and perhaps even small, resilient sedges. They root themselves, drawing sustenance from the decaying organic matter of the very platforms they now colonize. What were once clearly defined structures, pathways, and house foundations, now become blurred, indistinct shapes. The edges of the floating islands, once carefully maintained, soften and fray. They become indistinguishable from the natural vegetation along the lake's banks. Over time, these emerging plant communities create new living islands, an ecological echo of their human-made predecessors. You might imagine a bird, perhaps a great blue heron, landing on what was once the roof of a house, now a tangled mass of reeds and water lilies. Or a family of otters making their den among the submerged timbers of a former dwelling. The absence of human noise allows the natural symphony of the lake to reassert itself. The chirping of crickets, the croaking of frogs, the rustle of wind through new growth. This process is not one of violent destruction, but of tender absorption. It is nature folding back upon itself, reclaiming its own, not with anger, but with an almost gentle insistence. The distinction between what was built and what is natural blurs, then vanishes entirely. The materials that once housed families and held communities together become the building blocks for new ecosystems. Consider the houses themselves. Fashioned from reeds, mud, and sometimes lightweight timber, they were never meant to stand for centuries without constant repair. Once the daily human effort to patch, reinforce, and rebuild ceased, their decline was inevitable, yet beautiful in its natural progression. The thatched roofs, once waterproof shelters, would have opened up, allowing rain and sunlight to penetrate. The interiors, once filled with the warmth of family life, would have become open to the sky, their walls slowly collapsing inwards. The mud, often used to plaster and insulate, would have washed away, dissolving back into the lake bed. The simple hearths, where fires once burned, would have cooled, becoming cold stone surrounded by encroaching vegetation. You can almost see the outlines of these vanished homes, not as ruins but as ghost imprints, sketched in the changing patterns of plant growth and the subtle undulations of the water's surface. This soft reclamation is a powerful testament to the transient nature of human endeavors when placed in the relentless embrace of the natural world. It illustrates that even the most ingenious solutions, born of necessity and adaptation, are ultimately subject to the greater cycles of decay and renewal. The floating villages, once vibrant expressions of human will, transform into new forms, nourishing the very environment they once sought to master. What remains is not emptiness but a different kind of fullness. The lake bed beneath the former islands becomes enriched, a fertile ground composed of generations of organic matter, a blend of natural sediment and the decaying remnants of human habitation. This creates localized areas of increased biodiversity, attracting new species of aquatic plants and invertebrates, which in turn support larger fish and waterfowl populations. The very act of these villages dissolving contributes to the ecological health and richness of the lake. You walk along the shore now, perhaps pushing a small boat through the reeds, and you might feel a subtle difference in the texture of the lake bed, a slight rise in places where once stood a village island. The water may be a little shallower, the reeds a little denser, the aquatic life perhaps a little more abundant. These are the faint, enduring signatures of a past that has been folded back into the landscape, not erased but transformed. The beauty of this reclamation lies in its profound peace. There is no struggle, no violent overthrow, simply a quiet reassertion of nature's dominion. The human stories, once so loud and immediate, recede into the realm of memory and legend, while the lake itself continues its ageless narrative of growth, transformation, and renewal. This process offers a contemplative lesson. It reminds you that existence is a continuous flux, where forms rise and fall, but the underlying essence of life persists. The materials that once created homes for people now create homes for fish, birds, and countless microorganisms. The energy that went into their construction is reabsorbed, repurposed, and released back into the grand ecological cycle. The floating islands, in their gradual return to nature, highlight a profound ecological truth. Everything is interconnected. The reeds, the mud, the water, the humans who built upon them, and the subsequent plants and animals that reclaimed them, all form part of an intricate, self-sustaining web. The disappearance of the villages is not an end, but a metamorphosis, a quiet handover from one form of life to another. You understand now that the forgotten aspect of these villages is not a loss of significance, but a shift in expression. Their story is no longer one of bustling markets and daily struggles, but of ecological resilience and the quiet, persistent power of the natural world. They have left a legacy not of stone or iron, but of organic matter, enriched soil, and a transformed lake environment. This soft reclamation is a comfort, a gentle reminder that even when human structures fade, life finds a way to fill the void, to adapt, to flourish anew. It is a testament to the lake's capacity for healing and renewal, to its ability to absorb the imprints of human presence and weave them into its ongoing, timeless narrative. When you look upon the tranquil surface of the lake today, knowing what once floated there, you are not just seeing water. You are witnessing the culmination of centuries of natural and human interaction, a landscape shaped by ingenuity, abandonment, and the patient, tender embrace of the wilderness. It is a story whispered by the wind through the reeds, carried by the currents beneath your boat, and reflected in the quiet beauty of the water's edge. The forgotten villages, in their dissolution, teach you about impermanence, yes, but also about profound endurance. Not the endurance of rigid structures, but the fluid, adaptive endurance of life itself, constantly reshaping, always evolving, forever returning to its source. It is a lesson in humility, a recognition of the magnificent, overwhelming power of nature to reclaim and repurpose, to gently fold human history back into the vast, living tapestry of the earth. This cycle, from human settlement to natural reabsorption, completes a profound arc. It speaks to the impermanence of our creations, yet the permanence of the natural processes that govern all life. The floating villages, in their quiet return to the earth, have become an integral part of the lake's very essence, a profound testament to the delicate balance between human aspiration and the enduring power of nature's embrace. You drift now, not over the remnants of wood and reed, but over the pure, unbroken surface of the water where those villages once proudly stood. The sun gleams, perhaps, or a gentle mist still hangs low, veiling the horizon with a soft, ethereal blur. Feel the cool air on your skin, the subtle sway of your boat. Listen. Truly listen, not for the sounds of today but for the profound absence of what once was. There are no voices now, no distant shouts of children at play, no murmur of conversation carrying across the water. The rhythmic thud of a pestle in a mortar, the creak of a door, the soft splash of a fishing net being cast, all of these have faded into an absolute, unwavering quiet. You hear only the lap of water against your vessel, the whisper of the wind through invisible reeds, perhaps the distant cry of a water bird. This is the silence of an empty stage, a vast, liquid expanse where a vibrant human drama once unfolded. Imagine the sheer volume of sound that once animated this space. Every human settlement, no matter how remote, is a symphony of daily life. The quiet hum of a communal cooking fire, the specific cadence of a local dialect, the laughter, the arguments, the songs sung at dusk as the stars began to pinprick the sky above the lake. All these sounds were unique to these floating communities, woven into the very fabric of their existence, echoing across the water from one home to the next. Now those sound waves have long dissipated, leaving behind a vacuum, a hollow space where memory alone struggles to fill the void. This profound silence is not merely the absence of noise, it is an active presence, a palpable weight that presses in around you. It speaks volumes without uttering a single word. It tells a story of an ending, a complete dissolution. It is the echo of an abyss, a reminder that even the most ingenious and resilient human endeavors can, given enough time and the relentless pull of nature, be entirely reabsorbed, leaving barely a trace. You might find yourself straining your ears almost instinctively, trying to catch a whisper from the past, a phantom sound bite from a life lived long ago. But there is nothing. Only the elemental sounds of water and air, unchanging, eternal. And in that lack of human sound, you perceive the true depth of what has vanished. It is not just the structures, the homes, the paths between them. It is the very essence of human interaction, the shared breath of a community, that has dissolved. This absence creates a peculiar sensation, a blend of wonder and melancholy. You are standing, or rather floating, on the very spot where generations lived, loved, struggled, and thrived. Their entire world existed here, anchored to the water, sustained by its bounty. And now, their world is indistinguishable from the water itself. The boundary between human creation and natural environment has blurred completely, absorbed into a single, vast, shimmering surface. The silence is not desolate, not entirely. It holds a different kind of beauty, a sublime peacefulness born from the sheer scale of natural triumph. Yet, within that peace, there is an undeniable poignancy. You carry the knowledge of what was here, and that knowledge transforms the emptiness. It becomes a sacred space, a watery grave for an entire way of life. Consider the human effort, the ingenuity, the collective spirit that went into building these villages. Each reed bundled, each platform woven, each home meticulously constructed to ride the currents and resist the elements. Lives were dedicated to this unique existence. And now, the profound silence reflects the ultimate outcome of that struggle, a return to the primeval. This return is not a failure, but a completion of a cycle, a testament to the temporary nature of all things, including us. The silence here is a teacher. It instructs you on the ephemerality of human constructs against the backdrop of geological time and the ceaseless rhythms of nature. It gently yet powerfully reminds you of the immense scale of existence beyond our brief flicker. As you look out across the lake, the surface appears unbroken, pristine. Yet, beneath that placid exterior lies a silent archive. Not of written records or carved stones, but of the very water itself, holding the memory of countless lives, dissolved into its molecular structure. The currents that once carried the dugout canoes now flow unimpeded over buried dreams and forgotten hearths. This is the profound silence of history, not merely forgotten, but physically erased. It is not a silence of neglect, but a silence of reabsorption. The materials that compose the villages, the reeds, the wood, the soil used for gardens, have biodegraded, returning their nutrients to the lake, feeding new life, cycling back into the ecosystem. In this sense, the villages never truly vanished, they transformed. Their physical forms are gone, but their essence has been redistributed, becoming part of the lake's ongoing vitality. Yet, for us, for the human mind that seeks tangible proof and narrative continuity, this transformation registers as a disappearance, a profound loss. The silence is the sound of that loss, the quiet aftermath of a human landscape being re-wielded. Think of the individuals who lived here. Their hopes, their fears, their daily rituals. The laughter of mothers, the wisdom of elders, the burgeoning love of young couples. All of it played out against the backdrop of this very water. Their hands touched these waters daily, their feet walked on these floating platforms. Now the water remains, pristine and indifferent, holding the secret of their passage in its silent depths. This silent abyss is not meant to inspire despair, but a contemplative awe. It is a mirror reflecting our own transient existence. The villages, though gone, leave behind a powerful lesson etched into the very air you breathe and the water you witness. They speak of adaptability, resilience, and ultimately, the gentle surrender to forces greater than ourselves. The echoes are not audible but felt. They resonate in the stillness, in the vastness of the empty horizon. You feel the weight of countless generations, their presence now reduced to a profound, almost spiritual quietude. It is a quiet that invites introspection, a quiet that strips away the clamor of the modern world and allows you to connect with something ancient, something fundamental about life and its inevitable cycles. You are witnessing a living monument to impermanence. The silence here is not empty, it is pregnant with meaning. It holds the untold stories, the unwritten histories, the unremembered names. It is a repository of what was, a profound stillness that speaks of the grandeur of nature's reclaiming embrace. The lake, once a stage, is now the entire play. The actors have departed, the sets have dissolved, and only the vast, liquid expanse remains, shimmering under the sun, a testament to the passage of time and the profound silence of what was. This is not the end of a story, but an ongoing reflection, an invitation to listen to the deep, silent wisdom of the water itself. You drift now, not physically but in thought, on the very surface of that wisdom, feeling the faint, imagined currents beneath your feet. The water, which now mirrors the sky in a vast, uninterrupted expanse, once offered a different kind of reflection. It mirrored the underside of homes, the foundations of lives built upon its very undulations. Imagine, if you will, a world where the earth beneath you was not solid bedrock, but a gentle, living membrane forever in motion. You are standing in this imagined past, not on firm ground, but on a vast, woven mat of reeds and soil, meticulously constructed and constantly maintained. This is not a boat nor a fixed pier. This is your village, your home, a true floating island, carefully anchored yet always breathing with the lake's gentle rhythm. Picture the intricate engineering of it. Layers upon layers of buoyant vegetation, intertwined and compressed, forming a stable yet yielding platform. Willows, reeds, and grasses, bound together by the ingenuity of human hands, create a surface robust enough to bear the weight of dwellings, of small gardens, even of livestock. As you step onto this resilient raft, you feel a subtle give beneath your feet, a slight spring that speaks of its organic nature. The air is different here. It carries the scent of fresh water, mingled with the earthy aroma of damp soil and the distant smoke of cooking fires. There is a distinct soundscape that cradles you, the soft, insistent lapping of water against the edges of your island home, a constant, soothing whisper that permeates every moment. It is the steady heartbeat of this unique existence. Listen closely. Can you hear the creak of wooden planks as someone walks by, the distant, muffled voices carrying clearly across the water, amplified by the still air? Perhaps the contented grunting of a pig tethered safely on a nearby patch of cultivated reeds, or the splash of a fishing net being cast into the lake. These are the sounds of life, of a community that has learned to live in profound harmony with the liquid world around it. Your senses are heightened here, attuned to the subtle movements and sounds that tell you so much about your environment. You walk down a narrow pathway not of stone or packed earth, but of densely woven reeds, each step a gentle bounce. On either side, simple, functional homes rise, crafted from more reeds, mud, and sometimes salvaged timber. Their walls are thick, providing insulation against the chill of the nights and the heat of the day. Their roofs, often thatched, blend seamlessly with the natural landscape, making these villages appear almost as organic outgrowths of the lake itself. Small windows, perhaps just openings covered with woven mats, offer glimpses of the watery world outside. Consider the rhythm of daily life. The sun rises not over distant mountains but across the vast, shimmering surface of the lake, painting the water in hues of gold and rose. You wake to the gentle sway, a natural cradle that has lulled generations to sleep and stirred them awake. Your morning commute involves paddling a small canoe, a balsa, from your home to a communal fishing ground, or to a larger floating garden where vegetables are meticulously tended. The children, as soon as they can walk, learn to navigate these watery pathways, their lives intimately intertwined with the ebb and flow. The very concept of land takes on a new meaning here. Land is not fixed, it is fluid, a portable foundation. Families might move their entire section of the village, slowly drifting to a new fishing spot or a more sheltered cove. Imagine the feeling of your home shifting subtly with the currents, a constant, almost imperceptible journey. It breeds a profound adaptability, a deep understanding of natural forces. There is no rigid boundary between water and land, only a continuous, flowing interaction. Even the ground beneath your feet is a living entity, a testament to human ingenuity and perseverance. These floating islands, known by various names across different cultures and eras, from the Chinampas of ancient Mesoamerica to the reed islands of Lake Titicaca, represent a universal human response to challenging environments. They are monumental achievements of engineering, yet they often go unmentioned in grand historical narratives, overshadowed by stone castles and empires built on terra firma. They are the quiet triumphs of the everyday, the patient art of living with what nature provides. You lean against the woven wall of a house, feeling the faint vibrations of life within it. The smell of cooking, perhaps fish stewing with herbs from the floating garden, or freshly baked bread from an ingenious floating oven, wafts gently on the breeze. There is a sense of community here that feels deeply interconnected, perhaps even more so than in a land-based village. Everyone relies on the lake and on each other for survival. The boundaries between families, while present, are softened by the shared experience of living on the water. Night falls and the stars emerge, impossibly bright in the clear, unpolluted sky, reflected in the dark mirror of the lake below. The only light comes from flickering oil lamps or small fires, casting dancing shadows on the water. The sounds of the day recede, replaced by the symphony of the night. The croaking of frogs, the rustle of reeds in the wind, the distant hoot of an owl, and always the steady rhythmic lapping of the water. It is a natural lullaby, a constant, comforting presence that rocks you gently into slumber. You lie down on a simple mat inside one of these homes, the air cool and fresh. The subtle, almost imperceptible sway of your floating island becomes more pronounced in the quiet darkness. It is a feeling of being embraced by the earth, yet also by the water. There is a profound sense of security in this gentle motion, a timeless connection to the primal rhythms of the planet. Generations before you slept in this very way, their dreams shaped by the liquid world around them. These forgotten villages are not merely historical footnotes. They are echoes of an alternative way of being, a testament to human adaptability and the quiet brilliance of those who chose to build their lives on the waves. They speak of a world where permanence was not found in static structures, but in the continuous renewal of natural materials and the enduring spirit of community. They remind us that what we consider land is but one of many possible foundations for human civilization. As you drift closer to sleep in this imagined world, the gentle rocking becomes a metaphor. You are resting on the waves of history itself, cradled by the narratives of lives lived differently, yet with the same fundamental hopes and struggles as your own. The distant past, usually so remote, feels intimately close here, its pulse felt in the rhythmic breath of the lake. The silence you found in the empty lake earlier is now filled with these quiet, imagined sounds, these whispers of a world that existed, resilient and vibrant, on the very edge of the water. The people of these lost lands understood impermanence not as a tragedy, but as a condition of life. Their homes were built to be renewed, to be adapted, to eventually return to the lake from which they came. There was a wisdom in this cycle, a quiet acceptance of nature's grand design. They did not fight the water, they became part of it. Their legacy is not in grand ruins, but in the enduring memory of their innovative spirit, a spirit that continues to inspire awe when we pause to consider the possibilities. You are not just imagining a village, you are imagining a philosophy of life. One where the horizon is always shifting, where stability is found in flexibility, and where the line between what is wild and what is tamed is beautifully blurred. The calm, steady breath of the water is a reminder that even in the most unconventional of settings, life finds a way to thrive, to create beauty, and to leave behind a gentle, rhythmic echo for those willing to listen. Let the soft sway of this historical cradle ease your mind. Let the imagined sounds of water lapping, reeds rustling, and distant voices carry you deeper into a state of serene contemplation. The past here is not a distant, static image, but a gentle, living presence, rocking you softly on the historical currents. It is a reminder that history is not always about grand battles and towering monuments, but often about the quiet, ingenious ways people made a home in the world, even if that home was built on the water, destined to become a lullaby of lost lands. The deep, silent wisdom of the water now holds these stories, not as burdens, but as cherished memories, softly sung by the currents themselves.